To each other in Shiratska.
Across the road
Across the
from
road,
each
yes,
other.
9 and 10, so odd and even, yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't know each other really
The
well.
families knew each other just by sight or to say hello. They mixed in different circles.
Ah, okay. So would they have gone to school together?
No, my mother went to a Besyankov, which is a girls' school.
Yeah.
And my father went to a boys' school.
But both Jewish schools, not state
Absolutely,
schools?
yes. They talk about more who they knew in Zdunska Wola, and they got on with. My mother was very friendly with Barry Zion's mother,
Oh, that's so
Ushka.
nice.
There were 3 bloemers. The kleine bloemer, the große bloemer, and just bloemer. And the little bloemer, she was 4'10". The große bloemer was about 5'3", and the ordinary bloemer. And they all went to Israel after the war, and they all went to Los Angeles. And I'm still in touch with the kids. I grew up speaking Yiddish.
In their own homes in Zdunska Wola, did they speak Polish or Yiddish?
Yiddish. They only spoke Polish really outside or in business.
And what do you think they felt about Zdunska Wola as a town? Like, did they talk about the time in Zdunska Wola before the war?
They only really spoke about Zdunska Wola. It's interesting, when we get together with the family on Pesach or Rosh Hashanah, and they'd recount various stories, but they did say there was anti-Semitism there.
They did or they didn't?
They did. My dad remembers a blood libel. Must have been like late 20s, early 30s. Remembers, I think, followed, being in fights occasionally. But he said he grew up with friends. They played in the street. They were in youth
Polish
movement.
friends or just Jewish friends?
Both. His dad's family were shoemakers, so they interacted with a lot of Polish people. They'd often get, my father's family, they get cousins coming to stay with them, or my dad's parents from Lodge. Like Helena's dad, or be sent for summer to Zdunska Wola for holidays. How'd they come? Either by horse or cart or by train.
Probably
or
both.
By bus or whatever
Or by
it is.
both.
Or by both. They'd go to a farm, I remember. He would say that they'd go to a farm during summer, or the fields, and just play.
And do you know what sort of games they played, like when they played?
I know he played a game with a stick and a ball. It was an old European game. And you'd spin a top. It's old spinning tops with a string.
Yep.
I remember they played that because he played with that with me. And there's also like a top and a stick that you play. You spin the top and try and bounce it on the stick.
Oh yes, no, I remember those games too from when we were kids.
It's wooden toys they were. And he played soccer. A lot of soccer. Loved playing soccer. There's a photo of Dad marching in his sports uniform that I have on my poster.
I'll have a look to see if I can read the banner.
It's a...
What was the first word? Hanatzir is you.
Hapoel.
Hapoel.
Which is
As a worker.
Yeah.
Hapoel Hanatzir. So were they Buddhists, your family?
No. They weren't ultra-Orthodox. They're middle of the road like we were. I mean, they celebrate all the Yom Tovim, they keep Shabbos. But, one of Dad's brothers joined the army, the Polish army, for example. Whereas my mother's family were very Orthodox. One of the brothers studied in the Lublin Yeshiva, for example.
Wow. So no wonder they lived in very separate lives, because one was very religious, one was a bit more secular. Even though they kept Shabbat, they really were.
They were Alexander Hasidim. My mother remembers she used to smuggle in stories by Sholem Ash to read under the bedclothes.
Oh, that's so gorgeous.
And my grandfather, on my mother's side, had an interesting profession. It was called a rege. What it was that my grandmother and my mother and a few of the sisters, they would be like, I'm not sure what the name is, like pattern makers in cloth, stencil makers. My grandfather would go out and bring in orders to make patterns or stencils.
You just go hawking?
Just hawking, and my mother's mother and my mother and her sisters would do the work at home. She didn't say where they eat. In the kitchen, my mother would sit. And not so much my mother, she wasn't too good at that, but more her sisters and her mother.
The daughters.
The daughters.
The daughters. So your mother's sisters.
Yes. I can't tell you their names off by heart. I've got the list at home. Usually, Pesach and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur would sit around talking, and my parents would recount stories of Zdunska Wola.
Yeah.
On Pesach, when you open the door to Leah Hanavi, there'd be somebody who'd come around in a white cloth, tablecloth, and walk in the door and sit down and drink and eat, and walk out again. And they knew who it was, somebody very poor, and they all catered to that. Or Friday before Shabbos, they'd all take their chulum pots down to the baker. And depending on where you put it in the oven, you either get it back burnt or raw. So you had to know the guy. You had to know the guy very well to put it in the oven. And sometimes somebody poor would take your chulum pot because they knew what was in it, and you get their chulum pot.
Oh, that's so cute.
And they didn't say anything because they knew what was going on. And the pot always came back. In winter, they'd have this central heater, this wooden heater in the centre of the room, the stove, and they'd have little teapots to make tea, get water on it. The water was always hot. They just pour hot tea on. What was it called? Like a samovar. That's
Yes,
it.
yeah,
Permanent, it was a permanent samovar.
In everybody's home, in your parents' home.
Yeah.
In your father's mother's mother.
My father didn't talk about mother's home. Oh, it's a permanent samovar. All homes had this 100 years ago. In the centre, the way you heat up a house
it was the centre, pot belly.
A pot belly stove.
Yeah.
That's it, a pot belly stove. My mother would say, stoves today aren't what they were. We used to have an old cast iron stove. You put in timber, wood, and the food the whole house would smell of the wood and the stove. You know. They'd only get new clothes for Yontif and new shoes for Yontif. And that's what I always got, new clothes and new shoes for Yontif. That's in the early years, but Dad being a shoemaker, he'd make me shoes every now and again.
Yeah.
It'd be different. But they'd get new clothes purely for Yontif. It'd be unusual to get new clothes any other time of the year.
Yeah, no, everybody was poor.
That's right.
So
there's no need, really.
No, they had enough.
And they were hand-me-downs. Like, she'd get it from her sister, and she'd give it to her sister. I know they would make shoes, and they always wore very good shoes because they made it themselves.
And who did the designs for the shoes?
Oh, they did themselves.
And do you know anything about how they made them, and what they're made out of leather, of course?
No, but I will tell you something though is, when Dad opened up his business here, he called it initially Toe Top Shoe Company.
Toe Top.
Yeah. 1962, 63. And I said, why do you call it Toe Top? Because that's what it was in Polish. The translation, Toe Top.
That's so cute.
I never knew what it was in Polish.
Do you know whether they had a garden?
In the backyard, yes.
And did they grow stuff in it?
Vegetables.
So
Oh yeah, they grew vegetables. That was their summer holiday. They go to a farm, gather potatoes, and probably pumpkin and other type of root vegetables, and put them in the cellar. And they'd also make their own wine in the cellar.
Really? Out of?
Grapes.
Do you know which vegetables they grew in the backyard?
Carrots, onions. They were the main ones I knew, carrots and onions.
So which were the people that your parents talked about from Zdunska Wola?
Oh, mainly the ones that survived the war and they knew in Melbourne or overseas. They said it was a warm, loving family, which they always would anyway.
So they got on, it was not...
You never knew about personal matters. Because it was always the good times though, with the family that I remembered. My mother's family, extremely religious. In fact, my mother went to Beth Yankov, which is a Jewish religious school. Because she wasn't allowed to go to yeshiva, she would sit around the table listening to her brothers discussing and her father discussing Torah. And I remember when she came to Australia, and my parents had some business acquaintances who were involved with Hadass, and once the guy started discussing Torah, my mother jumped in and said, "You're wrong," and she quoted stuff from Mishnah and he said, "How do you know that?"
really.
She picked it up, yeah.
And did they ever talk about which of the festivals was their favourite and why?
I think Sukkot they enjoyed. Pesach and Sukkot they enjoyed the most.
It's also with my mother. My mother used to say Pesach was gorgeous because the whole house was polished from top to toe.
Yeah. And Sukkot, I remember my mother was saying, when we weren't allowed in the sukkah, in their house, a very small sukkah, and in my father's house they had an interior sukkah with the ceiling opened up. Remember, it's very cold in September in Poland, where the roof opened up. Well, they had a little hole in the roof.
And why did they enjoy Sukkot, did they say?
The friendship, the kinship, the fact the whole family got together. And when you're small, you know, the whole family's together, you laugh, you enjoy. Remember there were 6, 7 brothers and sisters, so everybody's together.
6, 7 on both sides?
My father, 6, my mother was one of 8, I remember. He was the last child, my father. 2 kids before him, a little girl died. The parents never said a word about it.
No,
Dad didn't
what
say.
happened?
It just happened, and it was acceptable then.
It's still acceptable. It still would have caused grief, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
So it was your father's responsibility to make the living in the family as a shoemaker?
Well, no, the brothers were shoemakers as well. It was a communal effort.
Family business.
Family business.
And so what did your mother's mother do? What did your father's mother do there as well?
Sorry?
Was your father's mother involved in that as well?
No, she was involved in running the house. She used to sit in the kitchen helping her mother, and she would overhear her father and her brothers discussing Torah and Mishnah and Talmud, and she would retain all those facts and information, which I never knew about. And many, many years later, in Australia, going back about 40 years, she was discussing it with a friend of theirs from Adas, and she corrected some of his interpretations, some of his meanings, and she quoted sections of the Mishnah and the Talmud to him, and he was totally astounded by that.
Why was he astounded?
He didn't believe a woman knew that information. Because in his culture, he was Hungarian, women were not taught anything about Torah or Mishnah, or about Rashi, or about Talmud.
But in fact, she wasn't either.
She wasn't taught, well, she went to Beis Yaakov and she was taught the basics. And in fact, the interpretation she learned was from the Tzenerena, which is the Yiddish simplified interpretation of the Chumash. Whereas she would overhear her father learning with her brothers, and she would in fact absorb more of the sophisticated interpretations and be able to expound on them many years later.
It's interesting because you discussed your mother as being one of the 3 girls who was less able in the stenciling department.
That's right, yes. And she also worked in the kitchen as a consequence. She would help more with the packing and the dispatching and helping her mother in the kitchen matters.
The packing and dispatching of?
Of the stencils.
So she was the one with the really good brain.
Exactly right, yes.
Mm-hmm.
She was the one, well no, she had a very good brain. I can't comment about her family and her sisters and brothers. I know she had an excellent brain. She used to read a lot from a very young age. And even when I was growing up in Australia, she put me onto books that she read as a child, like Quo Vadis by Mankiewicz, that she read in Polish, which I was amazed at. She read Tolstoy in Polish. She read Sholem Asch secretly in Polish.
Why was it in secret?
Because Sholem Asch was, as she says, an apikoros. He was against the cultural traditions and religious traditions of Judaism at the time.
That's interesting. What other books did she recommend to you?
She read the classics. She read Stendhal. A lot of the French classics she read. Stendhal, Dumas, Molière. And she read all those in Polish.
How old was she?
Should have been between 12 and 16, 17.
She was sophisticated.
She was very sophisticated at a very young age. She absorbed information very well.
Clearly the reason for your intelligence.
I can't comment about that because you don't know about my father.
Okay, well you can tell me about your father and his learning.
He went to a normal day school and a Hebrew school after hours, and he left school at 12 to work in the family shoemaking business. But years later, when he ran his own little business in Australia, he would do his own bookwork, and he could total a column of 30 or 40 numbers in his head and get it right each time, and beat me with a calculator. I had the calculator, and he would total them and get them out before I could enter them and see if he was right or wrong. You get percentages right. You had to pay commission. He'd get it all right. Well, it was 12.5%. He'd work it out almost in his head. Get it all right at once. So it wasn't just my mother. I got some of my brains from.
Oh, so it's 50-50. 50 your mother,
Absolutely.
50 your dad.
Absolutely. I can't comment about that.
So what was your family's relationship with political groups? Were there any Zionists?
Oh, very Zionist. My mother's side in particular were very Zionist.
Mother's side, who were very religious, had Zionists.
Yes. Well, Alexander Hasidim was Zionistic.
Oh, that's interesting.
From her family, yes. Well, there were two groups. There was Alexander Hasidim and the Gera Hasidim.
I think apparently it was three. So this group was Zionistic.
Yes.
Were Zionists.
Yes. When we first moved to our house in Hawthorne Road, which you never saw, which we moved to in 68, she went to the bank to open up a bank account. This is 1966, 67. And the bank teller says, "Can you please fill out the form?" And I said, "I'm sorry, my English is not good enough." And he said some disparaging remark to her about being a migrant. He said, "Listen, young man, I speak, read and write Yiddish, German, Polish, Russian and Hebrew. How many languages can you read and write?"
Perfect answer.
He filled out the form for her.
Sorry.
My father sang a lot of songs in Yiddish, none of which I recorded. He used to sing a lot of songs to me
And you don't
in
remember
Yiddish. I can't sing, first of all. Great disappointment to my dad that I couldn't sing. He'd sing Tum Balalai, Katie Hammered Along, and other Yiddish songs. He loved Yiddish, we'd buy Yiddish records, and he'd sing along with all Theodore Bickel sings Yiddish. Remember those records?
Which one?
Theodore Bickel. No,
Theodore Bickel, yeah, of
I
course.
said, 80 70 and all that. He said, and he sang me all the songs, all the words. He was very musical, my dad, a beautiful voice.
And they talked about their schools were Jewish schools, weren't they? Both
No, it was
sides.
non-Jewish. I think in the morning was Polish, in the afternoon was Jewish. That's the way it worked.
For both parents?
Yes. They didn't have running water. So she remembers going to the well
Probably at my great-grandparents' place.
and carrying water, on a water carrier, like you see in the old movies.
Yeah.
With 2 buckets in the freezing cold.